Ew.
Hello, let's wait a little bit more.
Good evening. Didn't actually get sent a notification there, which is kind of funny.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
You're good.
Thanks.
All right, so we're 3 minutes in. Maybe we can start. So the goal of this meeting is to talk a bit about online server and the goals, the visions, the rollouts and the planning strategies, whatever is like interesting from a high level perspective. And who's here from the Generals Online team despite X64?
It is just me.
It's just you. Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah. Okay, so well, first of all, congratulations to your public release, public alpha. So I think that's a big milestone for the General's online service. I haven't tested it myself yet, so I can't, because I'm busy. I can't tell like how it is, but it sounded like players were pretty happy, and there's already excitement about it, so that's good to hear. So basically, currently, there, as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any communications yet with anyone regarding, like, so I'm not aware about any communications between Community Outposts and Generals Online, for example, right? And what the strategies are. So I know that Community Outposts and us super hackers development efforts, we have like a vision for how the services should be in the end, like the rough outlook, but we don't know what Generals Online aims for. So maybe it would be good to hear a bit what the goal is, like how does Generals Online want to serve the community? What is the expected outlook? Like, like what is the expected runtime of this, and yeah, like is it meant to cater as a liberal service to the whole community, or is it more meant like a secluded area where Generals Online ships its client and people are encouraged to use that to play online? Like, how is this supposed to work?
Sure. Yeah. So firstly, we definitely do not want to be secluded. Like, I think the ultimate end goal here would be that we have one client in the community that people use, whether it's to play skirmish or LAN, as well as things like Game Ranger and stuff like that, or Generals Online. Like, I don't think we want to split the user base, and the user base already isn't massive enough to warrant that. Um, so we definitely want to be the go-to service for kind of normal online play on generals. I think like longer term, we haven't really determined like what the end goal is here. Like a lot of what we're doing right now is responding to community feedback, both from kind of more novice / intermediate players as well as streamers and professional players. So we have already reacted to some of that. Like for example, the community couldn't really land on what a good camera height was. So we now have that as a lobby setting so that everyone is happy. I think that is an approach that we will take regularly going forward. I do see us having to basically provide a very customized experience in terms of people being able to toggle on and off certain things, as well as any like gameplay enhancements or anything like that that get made over time by super hackers. Um, so yeah, so I think that's where we're headed there. But definitely the goal is to try and get as many people into this service as possible and not be a secluded client or anything like that. Yeah, I would be curious on seeing what your long-term plans are for online as well, because I think there's like I think it makes sense that we all get behind one effort instead of separating efforts out.
Yeah, so the ambition of Community Outpost, and so Community Outpost is the customer of the super hackers, right? So we just develop, and Community Outpost is meant to be the publisher, right? That's a plan. To be fair, I don't see much involvement of Community Outpost leadership right now, but yeah, I suspect this will ramp up once our developments are a bit further along the way. Yeah, we don't have a release yet, so we don't really have like users actively playing this. But yeah, from my side, and that's also the feel I get from developers, there's no urgency, no rush. We take our time to develop, polish the changes we make, and don't rush out anything. So, like historically, like whenever I released things to the committee, I also always took my good time to polish the things and only release when I was confident that it would be functional and well functioning. Yeah. So so online service. So we had experience with online service in the past with CNC Online, aka Revora.net, right? So when the GameSpy server shut down, there was already a population on Game Ranger. So there was a bit competing, but the bulk of the players were on GameSpy, so everything was okay. But then it shut down because it was acquired, and then CNC Online very swiftly brought up the server because they already worked on a server for all the CNC titles in parallel, and that came to life. But then the inevitable happened. The provider of that service lost interest, life changes, and yeah, then the service just never got updates, never was fixed. It was always buggy. Someone was there to restart it when it was becoming extra slow. The code is unmaintainable because it's poorly written. There was no handover. Yeah, so like this thing just died slowly, but it always had like a small player population left. So this is like a learning that obviously we want to avoid. Like if we have someone who hosts a server, then this should be in responsible hands, and there should be some administrative layer that has oversight and can maintain it long term, right? If someone has the ambition to really run this long term and a well maintained one, right? And so what I'm seeing right now from Generals Online is that it's not just the service, but it's also the client, right? Which opens a question like, what role does the client play in the servers? So the way I see it rolled out right now is that they are very closely coupled together. Like, so I imagine that if you want to connect to the server, first you need like all the client code in place, but also the server probably pushes the update from the generals online to the client that wants to connect to it, right? So there's probably like one client is like the primary customer, right? That's my expectation. So I think one of the key questions is, will it be possible to have custom clients be able to connect to generals online?
Yeah. So yes and no. Like today, so I guess rolling back a bit. So we aren't a direct replacement for GameSpy. We actually rewrote a lot of their client-side code today, just really to modernize a lot of it. Similarly, we didn't really want to be limited by the existing functionality that GameSpy had, and the way that it is implemented is a couple of decades old at this point. So we have rewritten that, which is where that client dependency, that client to server dependency comes from. Now, if that was to be integrated into like the super hackers repository, then those clients would be accepted by the service. There's a few things to note there. One, like any existing compatibility with Revora or CNC Online is obviously gone because we've stripped out GameSpy. We're currently not planning on maintaining GameSpy functionality. We think it's better to just replace it with something more modern. Secondly, we do have some minor protections in place to stop completely custom clients from joining. Like if someone can just grab a build off GitHub or grab the source off GitHub and build it with a bunch of modifications, that's potentially risky from both a mismatch and a cheating perspective. So we do actually, there's a few things that stop that. I mean, there's basic CRC checks on the executable when you join. We could easily extend that to other executables if needed. And also we don't publish the encryption keys that we use on the release client, if we want to call it that. Again, it's not great security, but it at least stops probably 99% of random people compiling code themselves and coming online with hacked clients. But again, like you would get all of that anyway if you integrated that into super hackers in the future. I agree fully on the longevity problem. Like the goal with Generals Online is definitely to be open source. We want the entire service open source so that everyone can contribute to it, maintain it. Similarly, like whilst I'm not planning on leaving the project, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. So I want to make sure that the project keeps going and that like it's not tied to just me or the team behind it. Similarly, we are also focused on affordability of running it. We try to implement it in a way that's very efficient and that we can host it on reasonably priced servers so that we're not tied to like $1,000 server bills every month, because obviously over time that's going to get harder and harder to sustain, and anyone that does pick up the project would need to be willing to foot the bill. So we are actually running pretty lean today. The service for the most part is written in .NET. The backend service. It's mostly just REST calls and WebSockets, so it's pretty lightweight technology. Connections are still peer-to-peer. We form direct connections wherever possible. We've done a few things to increase that by actually trying to map the port for them using UPnP, NatPnP, and NatPnP and PCP. But in cases where that doesn't work, we do fall back to regionally located relay servers, kind of similar to CNCnet from the older games. And those are, again, super cheap to run. Like the bandwidth rate is tiny and the CPU requirements and RAM and stuff is tiny. Like you can run that for like $5 to $10 a month on an ARM VM. So we are focused on longevity as well. We want to make sure that this is sustainable both from a development perspective, but also a cost perspective in the longer term. Because like realistically, Generals isn't going to have 100,000 players on it, and like there's no revenue stream, right? So we want to make sure that the server can keep going for as little cost as possible.
Mm-hmm. Historically, general 0-hour publishing has always been a very centralized. So that means different actors have different monopolies. So, for example, Gentool has like a monopoly on like pushing custom maps and some things, right? And it's closed source, and so it has like a monopoly on what it is. Likewise, GenPatcher has a monopoly on like fixing the game and then publishing add-ons and also community maps and so on. And then there is GenLauncher, which also has a monopoly on allowing certain mods to be published on that launcher, right? Because there is someone that whitelists it on a back end so that it shows up in the launcher in some way. And this brings a problem. It brings a problem that it disempowers the community to be their own publisher of new content. And the direction that we want to go now is empower anyone to publish their own things. And this starts with the launcher that we want to build, where everyone can launch their own product or add-on game, whatever they want, right? They are the publisher. They basically just hand over anyone a definition file of their contents, and then the launcher will take care of managing those game files and putting them where they belong and launching the game and so on, right? And ideally, this would also be the case for the online server, where people can author their own custom versions if they like to play that with their friends on the service without being pushed into the abyss to be able to play their custom things, right? So that anyone would be able to host rooms in the online server and say, hey, I play this version, which I made here, and someone can discover this and can decide, hey, I want to join that thing. Maybe I don't have this version installed yet, but maybe I can discover this version either externally through the new launcher, or maybe within the online server, and then download that and install it and matchmake with that person, right? So it would be easier to discover people this way instead of like trying to find them on some secluded services that no one knows about, aka like a private Redmond server or some Game Ranger lobby that eventually no one finds and joins, right? So I think there is a great value in not just big mods and like the core multiplayer community to have their content, but also like anyone really, right? Because there's always demand for people to publish their own contents. And I think it's important that especially the big mods like Shockwave and Rise of the Reds and so on, that they can push their own executables, right? And not need to contact anyone to be authored to publish their things, and that the server is liberal in the sense that anyone can make a client for it, and it's still secure and safe. And when they are online, they can only matchmake with people who are compatible with their client, right? So that the server is basically just a shell to offer the matchmaking. It is not a client. It is not like it doesn't push the player into any version. It's just a server. And I think that would be the ideal goal for an online service, because then it's really the go-to place for everyone, not just for this one version that is tied to the service or these mods that are tied that have been whitelisted or allowed. And so I'm a bit worried, like if we have a central authority that says yes and no, then we get in this predicament again that we have been always in the past with, safeguarding and, keeping people away, and, that then again secludes the community in ways. And so I think there's great value in making things as decentralized as possible. Now, obviously, the server can't be fully decentralized. It's still one service. But if it allows the clients to be pretty liberal, then I think that would be the best case scenario. And then we also avoid having multiple services competing with each other, right? There would be just one server because everyone can just go to it and everything just works on it, right? That would be the best case.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it would be much work to get to that point in terms of the code that we currently have. Really, there's only two things that stop you bringing in a custom executable. So there's the binary checksum check when you first connect to the service. Now that is mainly just so we can deliver updates, and we could easily make sure that that only applies if you're actually using like the official binary that we've shipped. Like if you're using, let's say, a shockwave modified executable, that we don't try and update that because we would be overwriting it with something that you didn't want. So we would just need to change how the updater works in that regard. Second thing that stops you joining with a customized binary right now is basically not being able to complete the initial handshake when you, so if you and I are in a game together and I have a modified client and you don't, you're going to have different encryption key from me unless the person's managed to get our encryption key somehow. So I wouldn't be able to connect to you basically because the handshake would fail. Now, I think we can decentralize that part. I don't think we need to be the authority that says what the valid encryption key is. Like we should just check that it matches. So if you and I both have a modified shockwave executable, and they both have the same encryption key, like they should be able to talk to each other on generals online. That shouldn't be a problem. We just need to be not strict around enforcing that the key being used is our key. It just needs to be a matching key.
Since you mentioned like the auto updater, I think it's also important to not have second class citizens. Everyone is first class, so that means like anyone would be able to facilitate some sort of auto update, right? So like the client would be able to speak to some service, right? That then tells, yeah, there's an update, right? So the client would be the one that can initiate an update, or the server tells there is an update, please update. Like there needs to be some mechanism that can facilitate this for all sorts of clients and not just like one, because then it's also, then you have like this problem where like you have one client that is like, you know, like somehow better than others, and that doesn't feel right. So I think like every client should be about right, about the same. That's my opinion. So you also mentioned that like, so generals online wants to maintain a client long term. Is that correct?
We want a client. It doesn't necessarily have to be our client. Like if it was super hackers, that would also be fine. We just want something that is reasonably stable and out of the box connects to our service basically, or is able to connect to the service.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, I mean, what I've seen so far, like you have been more. I didn't test it actually, but what I've read up on is that you have been a bit more adventurous by raising the logic frames from 30 to 60, right? So all the updates run twice as fast, right? And I say adventurous because it's quite a big change. Technically, it changes the game a lot, right? Like it will totally change the how the units interact with each other, like how much damage they apply, how much damage they receive. It will affect like at how much FPS people start lagging the game, right? So previously people would start lagging the game at 30 FPS if they go under that, and now it would be 60 FPS. So slower players would start lagging the game earlier, right? And you have all these ripple effects that start taking shape, and you know it's quite an adventurous release. This, I mean, it's very interesting, but it certainly it would be too much for the direction that we are currently heading. We're taking a far more conservative approach. As like currently we are like stabilizing the game, just fixing all the crashes, everything we find, every bug, and like bringing it up to a state where it's like a very nice replacement for original game plus Gentoo, so that like you don't need the original client, you don't need Gentoo, you can just have like a stable client that, you know, just is stable, but it plays the same as the original, and you can actually play with the original people, so that you can have like a grace period where you can use all the services with the legacy players, and players can gracefully migrate to the new executable, to the new ecosystem, right? And maybe the new server, right? But it's a very slow process from our side. We're certainly not, playing with big features. It should just be, logically the same, and which also I think helps a lot with providing value for mods like Shockwave and so on. Like it would be like a direct replacement, right? They can just use the executable as if they use the original executable, and they inherit all the fixes, but the game logic is exactly the same. So the mod will also technically play the same. So yeah, we are very conservative on this regard. We don't have any online server replacement strategies right now. So I think to all of us, it sounds very plausible to use Generals Online long term, if that is the best option. And to me, it sounds like it could very well be if Generals Online team takes care of their services, and that maybe we have some distribution of people like playing some active role. Like I would imagine, for example, that there should be moderators who take care that bad actors from the lobbies are maybe removed. Like if someone spams profanities all day long, then maybe it's questionable to have these guys in there. So like, for example, there's entitygamereplays.org, which is very competitive player focused, right? But then there are also like Arabic communities, and Russian communities pretty big. So I think it makes sense to onboard key people into key roles and to have like a good conversations with the different communities, and also the modding communities, right, of the different mods, so that they have a little bit of say in things. But overall, I think that it would be good if Generals Online could think about how to make this very liberal, so that there are no like blockers for anyone to use the service. And that brings me also to the next question. Like, how easy would it be for people to like integrate the service as a replacement for GameSpy? Are there any plans to make this like a easy DLL that you can link against, and you just call a few functions and you're good to go for all the matchmaking and buddy interactions? Or is this something that is more complicated to integrate? What is the vision there?
Yeah, so I guess rolling back a bit to your previous question, yeah, we have been pretty aggressive on experimental stuff, mainly around the tick rate. We do have that on a flag today because we do regularly go back and test the 30 hertz version to be able to actually compare them side by side. We are definitely seeing bugs with that, and we're addressing those as they come in, but we do view our changes there as kind of temporary. Like eventually at some point we assume that you guys will get to a 60 FPS client, and at that point we'll just remove our code and use the one that's there. So yeah, it's temporary at best. I guess the one benefit of us doing that early is that we've started flagging a lot of the issues, and any time that we're tracking them down, we're flagging it in code as well, so that at least when someone else, one of you guys or another developer or whatever, decides to go down the 60 FPS path, they have some starting hints on where the gotchas are going to be. Yeah, I definitely agree that moderators and cracking down on bad actors, cheaters, etc., is a huge concern. Running a community is like a whole job on its own, and it's definitely a ton of work, and not something that we have a ton of skills and experience in. So we're hoping to have more people help out there, or participate in another community if that's a feasible action. In terms of integrating, so we're kind of halfway there towards being a DLL today. Like all of the online services are abstracted behind basically a bunch of what we call online services interfaces. And there's like one for chat, there's one for like lobby, the rooms, all that kind of stuff. So we could actually move that out to DLL. The one part that is still needed is the modification to the game files. But most of those are in the WOL files. So things like the game setup, class, and things like the message of the day screen and stuff like that. The actual modifications to things outside of WOL files is very limited. But we do need those to exist just because we don't use the typical GameSpy kind of messaging system that they have for actions. So yeah, but I think I mean, put it this way, I've actually technically already done an integration because when we first started developing this, we started it over on Justin's branch, the one that was kind of more risky. And then that branch died out when he disappeared. So we actually already kind of integrated it back to Super Hackers once, and it took like a day or something. It wasn't very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can hear some other questions before we continue talking. If someone has some questions that he wants to bring up, I guess Maraka maybe could be interesting to hear if he has some thoughts.
I mean, I can give my thoughts a little bit. So, I think overall, just off of what I've seen from the player base, I think there's a lot of players who kind of got like a new sort of swing of, I'd say, like hope and whatnot, because they're seeing like visible things happening when it comes to like improving like the latency and whatnot. And like players are very well aware that like things are gonna be buggy like in the initial stages. Like that's not a secret. Even when I was playing the other day, I was noticing that some of the animations looked a bit funny, and some of the unit frame rates, because the game is no longer capped at 30 ms and now it's at I think 66 ms. Some units like quad cannons can operate at their full potential, which wasn't the case in the regular game, but as a result you end up seeing like new balance issues that almost kind of unfold as a result. But I think it's veering in the right direction. Like I don't think I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. I think this is a very positive thing that most players at least view this as, because number one, it means that they're able to see like tangible progress being made when it comes to sort of developing the like quote unquote community patch like post the source code release. But also like it's something that like people can like literally try right now, and it's very sort of readily available, pretty comfortably. I don't want to use the word marketed, but like just very comfortably visible for people to try out. Um, like there's an installer set up. It's like fairly easy even for people who are like bad with computers to like get up and running. I think the fact that the matchmaking aspect of it is available plus the reduced latency is probably one of the big things that really drives a lot of people towards it. So I think if I had to like summarize what I said, like essentially the fact that people are able to play with less lag is a really promising thing to a lot of people's ears, and people are willing to invest into that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think the higher update rate certainly raised raised some eyebrows by people. Probably many did not expect this to happen. Actually, also didn't expect to happen. I haven't seen it, so I can only speculate what it feels like. But yeah, it probably feels a lot smoother because the units probably don't skip positions just every 30 frames, but every 60, and that probably looks much smoother movement wise. Yeah. So so I wonder where we go forward from this. So I think from our side, we probably short term don't have like a big ambition to like cater to the online server, because we're still busy with fixing the fundamentals. Like the foundation for the game is not there. There's just like there's so many burning fires, and the game is so unstable, and the tools as well. And it's remarkable. Yeah, I always say that it's a miracle that the game actually runs. The retail game is just so buggy, It's unbelievable, like how much is wrong actually in there. But yeah, it's great to see that the players are excited for this. Yeah, I hope that you can continue like polishing the services. So I think there is the biggest value that I see is like the services, the server, like getting that stable so that you have great lobbies and like online functionality, like with matchmaking, and maybe even have more advanced things in there that were never in the GameSpy lobby, right? Beyond the socials and the game rooms and the chatting. Right, so there are probably ways to make this even more exciting, but that probably then requires a lot of UI work and things like this, so it could be tricky maybe. But yeah, really getting the online server in a nice polished state where everything is fast and nice is very, very good for all the players, because in the end we absolutely must retire people going to Game Ranger and Redman rooms and all these things. Like, it should still be possible, like, especially for tournaments. I think a Redman room is very valuable. But even then, like, if you have a good online service, then they can also just meet in the lobby and matchmake there, right? It's not a necessity, really. But yeah, the current state, especially with Game Ranger, is awful. It's super unsecure. Technically it's horrendous. Yeah, so we need a better solution. I I think I hope that you can make the server really liberal as much as possible. The open sourceness, I mean, if you say like some aspects better not be open source because of exploitation potential or some other reasons, that's probably fair. I can't say what it is, because I haven't seen it, so I can't really judge, but it sounds reasonable. Then, but maybe there can be at least some private organization that has access to this with multiple people, so that at least it's not like bound to just one person that can interact with the thing, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I think we can be fully open. Like that your second idea of like having a kind of trusted set of people to have access to a private repository was our initial plan. But I think we can get to an open source perspective. The main concern there is not really security, because like if someone's going to find issues, they can easily inspect the traffic that we're sending back and forth anyway and try and find issues. Sure, having source code is easier, but people find exploits all the time in closed source. I think the only real concern we had there was like if people spin off and make a second server, because like we don't want to fragment people over two services, right? There's not enough players for that. But I also think we just have to trust the community with that, right? That if we're making this open enough and liberal enough, and the servers are run responsibly and properly, that they will play on the servers that are there today. Yeah, I also agree that I don't think we're ready to integrate just yet. I think we should stay in close contact, don't have an end goal of that happening once both sides are ready. We still have a lot of work to do on our side. The kind of next three things that we're looking at, one is just general stabilization. That was part of the reason for this test launch, was to really be able to get concurrent large games going, so that we can start tracking down those issues that come up. And yeah, for the most part, it's stable, but we see some bugs that we need to fix. We also want to get to parity with what GameSpy had, which for the most part just means implementing quick match and the friends list that was there. We're currently working on quick match. We do have longer term plans to modernize quick match. Like for example, quick match in the original game had 2v2, 3v3, and so on. It would be nice if, for example, you could enter matchmaking as a group or a party, so that you can actually partner up with your friends or whatever and actually enter that lobby as a 3v3, but with not random people on your team. But like you said, like the biggest limitation there is the UI for sure. So there's a lot of work that we need to solve there before we can actually do that. And then the last thing that we have on our radar right now is improving direct connectivity. So we do see a very high success rate of connections because we have that fallback turn relay system. So like we aren't requiring that people go do all the jumping through the hoops that they used to do when they had to open ports on their router and all that stuff, because a lot of people just can't do that. But like someone will have better latency if they're directly connected, of course. So we've taken steps to enable that or make it more common, but we do want to get a bit further along in that effort and start doing stuff like hole punching to actually hopefully have a higher direct connect rate. Because right now we're seeing like 50% direct connections and about 50% relay. And some regions are always going to go to relay. Like there's some guys that play from Iraq and there's a couple from China. Like they're probably never going to get direct connectivity. But like for Europe and the US, we should be seeing higher rates. So we want to improve that as well, because that will result in a better game experience basically and lower latency for everyone. So that's kind of what's next on the roadmap for us.
Okay. So what I hear is that you're focused on online services, but also on improving the client. That means original EA mess, right? So there's overlap in what we do. Like so we don't do online stuff, but we do like focus on game engine and tools to fix and polish everything we find. So there's probably overlap in what we do right now. What I do notice is I don't know. So I haven't seen like any of the changes you guys do, but what I've noticed is that people touch code and they touch it in ways that the fix is not properly made. So like it's very easy to like hide some issues by making changes, but it's sometimes little bit harder to get to the root cause of the issue. So I don't know how you guys approach this, but I think it's important to really fix these things the right ways and to be very considerate about the impacts these things have. So one thing that I foresee is that people will touch the source code and they will touch it in ways, and then they will break features or compatibility with like with add-ons or with maps or with any third-party user-generated content, right? Like so, for example, Control Bar Pro is a very popular add-on for the game, right? And if you make code changes that then break aspects of it unnecessarily, right, then this would be not a good thing, right? Because then players wouldn't be happy about this, right? So and the worry that I see is that like these things need to be very carefully reviewed. So I wonder like are you aware about this, and like what is your level of attention? Like how would you judge this?
I mean, we are trying to limit the number of changes that we make to the, I'll call it the core game. Like most of the changes that we have made today are contained to the, I'll say the game spy portion of the game, mainly the front end parts. The other parts that we've done kind of major surgery on, I guess, is the transport. The previously it was UDP transport, and there's another one as well, but I don't remember the name. But we haven't stripped that out. Like if you go into Generals Online today and you play LAN or you play on Radmin or something, you are still using the old transport. Like anything that we've done in the transport space, we've added on to a separate class, basically. So we are trying to minimize the number of modifications that we make there, mainly because realistically we shouldn't need to make a ton. Like most of the things that we're working on replacing are tied to the game spy portion of the client. We have also reused some of the game spy classes where it made sense. Like there was a game spy staging room class and a game spy game spy game class, I believe was the name of it. Like we do just reuse those structures because they're basically just containers of information, and we have all the same information. So we are trying to minimize the amount of changes that we make to the client. Similarly, we want to avoid like integration hell when we do eventually integrate or we do any pull from the super hackers repo today. So yeah, but I share the same concern. Like I'm concerned about, like it's a huge game. A lot of stuff in it is also not implemented great. So it's very easy to make a change that then breaks something in a completely unrelated area of the game. So it is a concern that I have. I would like us to get more thorough in code reviews, but right now there's no other coders on the project, so it's kind of challenging.
Okay.
I would expect if we do. Sorry, I was going to say I would expect that if we do a full integration, that we do a very deep review of everything being integrated.
Okay, I see. Yeah. So, like one goal we certainly have is to merge 0 hour and generals long term into one code base, so that both games are supported from one executable. Because there is great value in having like two games instead of just one, right? There have been voices that say just throw generals away and be done with it because it's the dead game. But generals still was a very beloved game when it was active, because it was not like 0 hour. Like it is a different experience with just its three factions. It does play different, and it would be sad to just throw it away. And that's why we said, okay, let's try to carry it forward. And it certainly will be possible to get it merged together. But this also means that a lot of our code will physically move, right? So we will move more things into core. So it will physically move. The files will move, and yeah, so there could be complications if the code diverges more with your fork, right? So that's something to consider maybe. Yeah, but I looked at your fork and I see that you integrate actively. I don't know if you like catch everything or just cherry pick things. But yeah, the further it would diverge, the more difficult it probably will become, especially when we move the files around and merge the things, right? So the expectation is, so 0 hour has much more functionality than generals. 0 hour has some regressions over generals, right? So someone fat fingered certain things and broke things that work correctly in generals but don't work correctly in 0 hour. So that happens. But that's more like the minority. There are more fixes and more features in 0 hour that will then go to generals and make generals give that more functionality and more fixes, right? With small fixes, stability fixes, but also bigger fixes that could be visual or functional, right? Or features, like there's a lot of controls things that are missing in generals. Yeah, so that's a big thing. We don't really have like a timeline yet, but it's certainly for release. But the initial plan for our rollout was to release a client that is retail compatible. I think I already mentioned this. And this would allow to have players onboard the new projects seamlessly with the existing services. So they would still rely on Game Ranger and Redman. These primarily Revora, I think it's kind of dying out anyway, which is probably a good thing. And yeah, if Generals Online was possible, then we could also release in a way where we say, okay, we have people on board, in the existing services, like they can still access the legacy player base, right? So nothing is broken apart. That's a big goal, that we don't want to interrupt the current multiplayer experience, right? The players, they like you won't be able to reach all the players at once and transition them to the new service. That won't work. They would still go where all the players are, right? And so the hope is that we can roll it out and onboard more people into our new ecosystem, and then hopefully we can steer them gracefully to a new service by saying, it's like a better way to matchmake because it has quick match and it has these improvements and so on, right? So like there should be a initiative by functionality, not like forcing someone to go somewhere. And so what I'm seeing right now, and that's a bit the concern I have, is when you published your service, you are competing for players, right? So players who want to join Generals Online, they are kind of secluded. I mean, they can still, obviously, they can just close a client and they can join anywhere else, right? That's easily possible. But since the game is also like a different experience now, right, with a faster tick rate, so it plays different, it pushes players into a new realm already, right? So there is a bit of a risk of player split, right? Because I could imagine that some players say, well, I really like this, I don't want to play the old shit again, right? And they will say, okay, I just play there, but there are only 6 players, so not much action. And then these players will also be missing in the legacy services, right? So there's this risk of already splitting the players apart. And for us, this was not the idea of how we plan to roll out. We still have the plan of retail compatibility, first release, stable, with all Gentoo features replicated, and with the relevant ones, not all of them, just the relevant client ones, like the camera height and so on, right? And to give like people a really easy time to upgrade, right? So in that regard, the General's online release is a blessing, but also a little bit of a curse. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, it's not a blame or anything. It's just like an observation.
No, I get you. And yeah, I think we're like really the main reason we launched was to just hit the service harder. Like we've been testing since like early April, I guess, but like we had like 4 or 5 people. Like that's not anywhere near enough to really tease out all the issues. And we definitely saw way more issues when we had more people playing it in larger matches and stuff like that. So yeah, but I get your concern. Yeah, I think a few things. One, coming back to your earlier topic about integrations, yeah, we are docking onto your repository structure. So the hope there is that we'll easily plug in and not have like merge hell when you guys do make large changes like merging generals and 0 hour. We integrate changes roughly once a week. So it's kind of like a weekend hobby at this point to merge everything. So yeah, we did hold off on support for base generals because we'd seen the conversations that you guys were having about merging them, and we figured it was better to right now just focus our time on one client, and then once they're merged, we will support both once that change is made. It should be pretty straightforward. There's some minor differences in terms of the GameSpy functionality between them, but it's nothing crazy. When you say that, so question for you, when you say that you want to launch like a retail compatible version, and I get that you want to keep access for Game Ranger and Radman, does that also include Revor, or would you be open to replacing Revor with Generals Online?
Yeah, so I mean, initially the thought would have been to just like plug in Revora with the GameSpy stuff and good to go. There's no plan in this direction right now. I think I haven't even joined the online lobby once with a client only network. I mean, if we could have Generals Online early, that probably would be fine, but it's not like something we currently active develop. So I think it would also be fine to do this later, I would imagine. I don't know. So we would need someone who actively like does it, right? Who actively maintains it. I'm currently can't do it because I'm already busy enough with all the other stuff. So if someone was there who started adding things to GameSpy and made it like a minimum viable product work, then that would be fine. But it would need to be replicated to both Generals and 0 hour. We don't have, so 0 hour is still our first class project, but we replicate everything to Generals so that they are always in sync with what we do to them, so that the merging of them together will be easier. Yeah. So yeah, having Generals Online as a primary online multiplayer service, I think that is certainly desirable because Revora is trash. It's not good to put the players there. But yeah, I think for like a first release, I think it's also important that players can still matchmake as usual in Redman and in Game Ranger, because these have been established platforms for the game for a very long time. They have huge player bases, huge in relation to the community, right? Because that has been the status quo for just so many years now, over 10 years already since the shutdown of GameSpy. And so it will take time to transition these guys, right? I think what will help is once like YouTubers make these tutorials on how to install things and how to onboard. And then we also have the Gentoo ticker, which probably currently reaches still a very large portion of the player base. I think the install rate of Gentoo was like 95% of the players. So it has like a ticker, and there you can like push a message. So certainly there are ways to like inform people, but still, even then, it will take a while because people also need to be willing to spend the time to install the stuff and try it for the first time, and this can take a long time, right? So yeah, I think it's good to have like a stable server that doesn't have like a big bugs in terms of the service. In terms of the client, I'm not so worried because we are very diligent in our work. So I'm pretty confident that we can like make a first release which is very stable. I mean, there's always a chance of like sneaky mismatches that maybe we missed, but we currently already test against thousands of retail replays to make sure that we don't introduce new crap, right? That everything works as it should. And yeah, I'm pretty confident that we can make releases which are really stable and polished right from the get-go. And I think this is what the end user wants to see. He doesn't want to have a version that has flaws, but he just wants to download a version that is really nice. And even if it takes longer to the next update, he just wants to have a stable experience. That's how I see it. Because I, as a player, I would prefer a stable experience over testing the things and running into new issues and suffering stability or weird bugs, right? So if there is a release, ideally it was as polished, and as I said, I'm very confident that we can do that. And yeah, but our first release will still take much longer, I would say, because yeah, there's just so much stuff left to do. And but yeah, I think once we have a good stable experience with all the retail stuff fixed and the big Gentoo things replicated, we can make a release. I think it's up to you whether we can make Generals Online happen quickly or not. Yeah, I'm not opposed to having this now or later, but I certainly see if everyone is happy with General's online service, then I don't see any reason why we shouldn't use that, right? So yeah, unless someone has maybe some objections to that, maybe someone has bad experiences.
They do. They should speak up now so we can fix them. Yeah, like I think we're in a good state today in the sense that we don't change anything on the land side of the game. So like Revora and stuff like should be untouched. And when it would be integrated into Super Hackers, I don't anticipate that there would be any issues with Radman or Game Ranger. In terms of like Revora, we actually have like feature comparity with Revora today because they don't have quick match or anything. I do expect that we will have quick match probably in the next 2 weeks is when we'll have quick match. So I think that by any point that we would integrate with super hackers, we should be greater than or equal to what Revora has today. So I feel fine on that front. Do you guys have like a rough timeline on when you think that first build would land?
I really have no idea. It also depends on the launcher development that we had planned, and I don't see much happening there because it's usually the same story the last years that people are excited to start something, but then the commitment is missing, right? So right now I'm not so much involved in the launcher, but it's important that we have a launcher where we can build this ecosystem to onboard the people. Like, so basically the landing page for the game should be a decentralized launcher. It shouldn't be the game itself, because we need a platform where people, and now I'm a bit going around your direct question, but just to give a bit more context, like the landing page should be a decentralized launcher where publishers can push their content, because it's important that people can discover user-generated content and that they can access it and that they can customize it and they can access maps and add-ons and get updates, and that they are not tied to a service. Like, I don't see that Generals Online will be like a central, like the central place where this is like the entry point to the whole experience. The entry point is probably the launcher, and that one is not that advanced yet. The work has just started, has been planned for a long time, but so that's a risk, I would say, for our release. So maybe the first release will have to be without this launcher, which would be a shame. So that's why I don't see a rush from our side, because the launcher is not that far. So it's a bit upsetting. But if the launcher was already there, that would put more pressure on like us delivering a client already. But like, since our builds are typically stable, it would be possible to probably package up an executable client pretty fast, right? Like maybe have like it tested for a week or so to iron out anything missing, but not submitting anything new to it in the meantime, and then having like a first release. So it could be pretty fast, but the problem is we don't have the launcher capabilities yet, and it would be important because it should become the home for the users, so that they also catch the new updates, right? Because like, there's no good use to like publishing a new client and then people running all sorts of different clients that they are not in sync with each other, right? So ideally players subscribe to publishers. So Community Outpost would be the publisher in our case, and the people like are subscribed to this feed and that they get the upgrades, and then they can hop in and use it with any service they like, ideally with the Generals Online. But really, it should be up to the player, right? Like, I think we shouldn't push the players, because in the end, the players will decide what they like the most. So the incentive should be by what it gives them the biggest value, right? And not like what we think should be the desired path, right? But obviously, we need to show them the way to what we think is the desired path. So I can't really, I don't have a timeline. Maybe that's bad, but there's just so much left to do. So would the community be patient? Probably. I'm not so concerned about this. Now, long term, there's just so much more work to do. I don't know if many people realize it, but the game is just so broken that it will take years to polish all this. And it's not just the code side that is bugged, but it's also the data side, right? So there's two aspects. You have code and we have data, and we work on both things, right? So like, a lot of the stuff that is broken is actually in-game data as well, right? It's not just the C++ code that is so bad. And fixing all these things is a very long effort, and yeah, hopefully we can have a release, maybe in a few months, but I don't think it will be weeks. It probably will be months. Maybe in 3 months would be a timeline. I don't know. I can't tell you.
Yeah, no, I think that would be fine. Like I would be more
I
concerned
have a
if you said,
question.
sure, go
So
ahead.
regarding the launcher, I'm so one of the people working on it. I basically have like a working prototype. It's like working with a couple of features on it, and I basically just have to do like merging with the Jana repository. So even though it says like a couple of months, I think it's be like at most a month or something, because last few weeks I was also busy. I couldn't work on it anymore. So now I'm also gonna like just make the features the main repository.
Okay, that sounds very exciting. Yeah. Okay, that's really cool. Yeah. Make sure to reach out to people to help you test the launcher, and maybe give feedback. I would also like to take a look at the visuals and like how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, if you could get at least some of what you're doing into a branch somewhere so that other people can see it, that'd be really nice, just so we can get a sense of how far along it is.
I mean, so far I've just created like a game profile system, which we can add executables or data paths, and then it launches the game from there. And then you can like make desktop launchers. And it looks like if you currently have GitHub like releases for like the new patch, for example, and then it auto updates based on the new releases, and then you can play then using that game profile.
Mhm. It's sound we can talk about this in isolation again, right? About the launcher, but yeah, basically the launcher will be our jump pad to all the content, the published content, and yeah, one service I think will be great. One online server for whole community. Yeah, so I'm happy to hear that our visions for the server seem to align. For the client, they seem maybe to diverge in ways, right? Because we are way more conservative about changing how the game runs than you are. But yeah, I mean, things can also live side by side, right? So it will be inevitable anyway that, and we shouldn't discourage this, that people develop their own clients, their own versions, right? So, and it's probably a good thing. Like you want to have mods coming up that publish their own contents, right? And can act independent of anyone else, right? So no one should be asking us for anything, and we shouldn't be asking anyone else for anything, right? This would be the best case scenario, that everyone just collaborates and everyone picks the pieces that they like best and that they can use for their own product, right? And this also includes the server, that if it's liberal and everyone can just like make their version work for it, then I think that would be the perfect home for the community. And yeah, I think if we can get all the people on this one server, would be great. So my recommendation is like keep polishing and fixing and enhancing the server, get the community people in there to have like representation in the different communities. I would recommend to maybe to put it more under the banner of like testing the service. Like, so currently you have it under the banner of an alpha build. I'm not sure what the community will understand of it. I think as a player, I would see this more as like a product that is already like very well functioning and everything's perfect, and this is the go-to client, right? But maybe that sets the wrong expectations. Yeah, so maybe there needs to be a bit communication. I would have released it as like a test build, if it was up to me. But I mean, it's up to you how you want to handle this, right? It's your decision. Yeah.
Yeah, we probably should have called it like a multiplayer server test or something, because that's more in line with what it is. Yeah, and I agree that like the entry point shouldn't be Generals Online. It should be the launcher when that exists. I like that idea. Similarly, like we've been trying to keep our website pretty minimal, as you've probably seen. It's a very basic website. Really, the only reason that website exists other than downloading the thing is to surface some information, like in terms of like the players that are on in the lobbies and stuff like that. We do want to minimize the overall effort that we have to put into the website. So yeah. I had one question for you that maybe you haven't really thought about yet, but how do you feel about identity or authentication for the online service? Like, do you feel that we need to have our own like account system, or do you think so? So today we use Steam and Discord. We just use their OpenID or OAuth. We did have plans to do our own account system in the future because there were some concerns that like perhaps Steam or Discord isn't available in certain countries in the world. But given that we have users from China, it doesn't seem like that was a valid concern. But do you think we need to support more providers there in the future? Do you think supporting Steam and Discord is open enough? Like maybe you don't have any opinion. I don't know.
Oof, yeah, I haven't thought about that. To me, maybe you can have like a traditional account system where people can create account directly with the service, plus these quick logins with a different service. That's how other services do it, right? That you can either register or you use some Google account to log in, right? So maybe you can have both.
Yeah, that was what we were thinking. I just wanted to make sure we weren't hugely misaligned on that, or that you felt maybe it was too difficult to have our own account system or something for users. But I think that's a good balance of simplicity with the OAuth providers, as well as if you can't use those services for whatever reason, you can make an account. So yeah, so I feel like we are aligned on like 99% of things. I think like the little misalignment that we do have, I feel is pretty straightforward to solve. I don't think there's any huge problems there. I think the main thing right now for us is to like stay in touch. Like I think that obviously as your release date starts to get cemented more, we should start trying to work out if it's feasible for us to integrate in that time or not. And in the meantime, on our side, we're going to continue to stabilize the service and keep adding the remaining game spy functionality so that we have a more complete service, hopefully in time for when you guys release. Does that sound like a good plan?
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Do we have other questions from maybe someone else who would like to know something from X64 or myself or anyone else?
Yeah, I was just going to say, how much of the networking code have you actually changed? Is it only affecting the online mode? Because you said that Ethernet LAN works exactly the same as it was. So be interested to hear about that.
Yeah, sure. So the existing transport that Electronic Arts or EA had provided is still there and it's still utilized in LAN. We have not touched that at all. We've added a new transport class which uses our re-implementation basically, but we haven't, even though there's no reason why we couldn't, like we could port that to LAN, we just haven't done that because we wanted to keep LAN as is and we don't want to break any functionality with existing VPN solutions. So it is literally as is. We haven't touched the file. So yeah, there's no changes there today. There's nothing that would stop us making that, but I don't think it's a worthwhile change at this point. Most of the networking changes that we have made really are around trying to get around like strict NAT and stuff like that, which shouldn't be a problem if you're using Radmin and stuff. Like Radmin and Game Ranger should be taking care of that for you, hopefully. Or you've opened ports manually, one or the other.
Okay, that's interesting. So there haven't been any changes to the lobby system online in that way, because we know for Ethernet at least there are issues with map length names and user name lengths where essentially there's a fixed limit of characters and message size there. So I assume that's something which just works okay in the online system.
Yeah, we haven't seen any issues there. If it did exist in the LAN system, then it's still there in general as online. But it probably is not there in the I'll call it GameSpy online functionality that we have. To be honest, we've seen users abusing the username system pretty aggressively so far. There's some crazy long names. There's Chinese characters, Arabic characters, all kinds of things.
So I
Any
guess
other-
beyond that, it's still basically just peer-to-peer between all the characters, between all of the users in the end, in the same fashion as what it traditionally was. I'm guessing that the Generals Online servers are just for bringing players together and then a single person hosts still, I guess? Or is it actually a hosted service for the actual online game?
Yeah, so it is still peer-to-peer. It's kind of in the middle, I guess. It's not a hosted service like a dedicated server or anything like that. That would actually be a ton of work, probably years of work, I would anticipate. If you truly wanted to get away from lockstep and actually be, let's call it a modern networking implementation. The one thing that we have changed is that we do use the relay servers. So if everything goes well and you either have ports already opened on your router, or we can open them through something like UPnP or hole punching or anything like that, then great, we form a typical peer-to-peer connection like the original game did. Now that's probably like 50% of the cases. We're seeing a lot of people that in the base game wouldn't be able to connect to each other. In those scenarios, we route their traffic through a relay. That's basically just a turn relay. I can share the Wikipedia page on it once I've finished talking. But basically, it's a very simple packet forwarder. And those sit distributed around the world today in Amazon Web Services. And the idea there is that basically everyone can reach that server. So if you and I can't directly connect to each other through peer-to-peer, we actually go through that relay server, but it is just bouncing packets. It's not running any game logic or anything like that. And typically, assuming you're not in some weird location in the world, like typically that adds on like 20, 25 milliseconds of latency. We do have relays in most regions. We've got Europe, we've got the US, both West and East Coast, Australia, Japan, China, and the Middle East. So we're covering most of the world, I would say.
No, that's cool. And I guess a lot of the service, does it run on traditional IPv4? Because I'd heard in the past that some of the issues with Revora was because it was pure IP6.
Yeah, we are IPv4 today. We are investigating IPv6 at least for connecting players together, because there's some potential benefits there in terms of the direct connectivity rate, but I don't really know where that investigation is going just yet. Like I need to see more data out of it to see if it's actually worthwhile and does it cause any other side effects.
That's actually a very good point about the IPv6. I think tackling this and allowing people to play with IPv6 matchmake and actually play in the session peer-to-peer is a very important goal, because there are users that cannot have an IP version 4. Like everyone who uses a SIM card in their mobile phone as like a hotspot to connect the game to won't be able to connect with IPv6. They need some VPN to tunnel IP6, and otherwise you cannot play it. So having some native way to do this, I think it's a very worthwhile goal.
Yeah, I think when we do drop compatibility, we probably do want to look at the Ethernet LAN side of things, because there's likely a lot to be cleaned up there as well, especially as you say with IPv6. So that could help people in that regard, even when using other VPN services that might offer IPv6 as well.
Joker, what is your perspective on the current things from Game Replay side?
Don't think he's there.
Looks like he's mute. Okay, well, okay. Good. Yeah, from my side, I don't have anything else to ask. So I guess we need to see, like, yeah, what the future developments will be. Yeah, as I said, we don't have a push for online stuff right now. It would require like x64 or team to help us doing, or it would need to be super straightforward and simple that someone can read like a doc and just do it, or copy paste it from the repository over, right? It needs someone who does it, right? But I think everyone is already super busy with engine and game related things, fixing things. So yeah, it's not an immediate priority. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if an integration does happen, like I don't mind taking like charge of that part. Like that, I would be fine with that. To be honest, that's mainly the parts that I'm interested in working on in general is the online, the game engine stuff. I mean, it's fun to work on, but it's not something that I really want to pursue right now. So I wouldn't mind doing that if and when it happens.
May I ask you, what is your history with the game?
Yeah, so I actually haven't played Generals in a while. I'm reasonably young enough that I was a kid when I was playing it, when it came out in 2001, I think it was. Played it for ages. The online service went down. For a while, I did play Game Ranger. Nowadays, I don't have a personal PC. I just have a work PC, so it doesn't let me install any VPN software, so I stopped playing basically. So I'm probably a bit rusty on the knowledge of the game. A lot of it's distant memories.
Okay.
Susan, I can step in probably for Joker on behalf of Game Replays. So yeah, I've been listening to all of this much care. It sounds all very good, and I'm also very happy to hear that both of you share the same long-term vision. That's very much a relief, actually. Yeah, so basically, from a community point of view, maybe Game Replays can actually help or assist in the process of connecting what you guys both are doing and with the player base. So Game Replays is mostly dedicated, you could say, to cater towards the competitive community, but it's not restricted to that. And yeah, we have an extensive experience with, for example, catching cheaters and moderation and all of that stuff, ladders, ladder rankings, all of these things. And so maybe we as Game Replays can act as sort of a helpful connection towards the player base actually, and maintaining that player base in a clean way. And because I've also heard you talk about x64 about do we want to have accounts or not? Yeah, this is something then that maybe also would connect with Game Replays, right? So yeah, I don't know how you guys see that, but that could be a cooperation, or that could be the role that Game Replays takes.
Yeah, I think the more identity providers we can have, the easier it is for people, right? Like people probably have an account on Game Replays or Discord or Steam. Like the more of those we provide, the less chance there's someone that doesn't have a easy way to sign in.
And also, I believe that Xizon, that the community outpost was initially the idea of sort of taking the role of connecting what you are building with the community and the player base. But that seems to be, yeah, well, discontinued is maybe the big word, but it's not going as smooth as it could be. Maybe there's a gap there to be taken for for some entity, and could be Game Replays perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, from a developer perspective, I think there's no reason for us to cut ties with anyone at this point. So,
No.
like, we just wanted to develop, right? So, for us developers and super hackers, and I think like well, I think with Generals Online, they are more happy to interact with community. But like I think our developers that work on engine, they shouldn't interact with engine as much. Like, so for example, I would have liked like to not even initiate this meeting today, right? It shouldn't have been my responsibility to kick this off in the first place. Like, someone should be more engaged in these plannings and meetings and talking with people and managing, developments, but talk to the developers so that the developers work towards like a common goal, right? So it would be nice if more people were taking the role of leadership, right? So that the developers, they focus on developments, and the leadership or management, they take care of talking to community with players and helping players, interacting with players, banning players, yeah. And the developers, they don't need to deal with this stuff. That would be the best case. So the more people that do management, I think the better, responsibly, and with proper intentions. And yeah, so I don't want to talk bad about anyone. So I'm sure everyone is busy with things in life, right? So but yeah, it doesn't impact us for development, right? We know what to do. So it's not a problem, but it just means that it probably won't be much visible to community, right? So like what we do right now is like it's only visible to users who visit the GitHub, for example, right? They see what we're doing, but we are not actively like posting in servers and in online lobbies, or mouse word of mouth, or forums, right? So yeah, if there is more like interaction with other people, I think that would be very helpful. I would recommend that Game Replays goes in dialogue with community outposts to talk about things as well. So yeah, I can only say from my perspective, I don't want to manage so much. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's understood, and also I think that's the right division of tasks, definitely. And I also, I think maybe actually Game Replays will be more closely in collaboration than with what x64 is building, really, because there's more community focused efforts there, I would say. Whereas probably the efforts of Xizon on the super hackers is more towards basically x64 as a client, you could say, of Xizon's work, and then Game Replays is again sort of a client of x64's work. So that's sort of maybe how the chain goes.
Well,
But then also, no, not really.
I mean, it's everything. So online service is relevant for Game Replays, but game client is also very relevant, right? Like, so you will have high interest that the game is built in ways that is in accordance with what players want, right? So our customers, so our primary customer is Community Outpost for publishing the community patch, but our extended customer, so to say, is also any mods like Shockwave and Rise of the Reds and Contra, like if they want to pick up our developments, because we don't want to like deviate from the original game. We we cater to original game, right? We don't build a mod that changes the game in significant ways. Like we focus on generals and 0 hour to build like a foundation, and so it's very relevant for like projects and communities that want to build on top of it or use it directly as is. So you are most interested in what x64 Generals Online does, but also what Super Hackers does. So
Right.
it's both are very relevant for players. Yeah.
And the part then, for example, about like if you make you're building an open platform, right, Cizon, where basically anyone can make a mod and use that service then that x64 is building and invite players to play it there basically, and players can just download that mod there on the spot. Who or where would the check lie then in that whole process of how do we deal with bad actors basically? If someone is making a mod which looks good on the in game, but actually there's some Trojan horses in there and so on. How do you deal with that? Because you said also before, Exit, on that in the current system where you transfer maps to each other, there's this potential danger as well that you are actually getting a Trojan horse or a virus from someone. If you make it an open platform, how will it be on x64 side to deal with that, or will that be on the super hackers side, or?
So the way this is envisioned is that the launcher that we are building is a decentralized launcher, so anyone will be able to publish their own works on it. So no one needs to ask for authority to allow them to publish something, but they publish things themselves. It's like when you use YouTube, you can be a creator and you can publish your video, right? Like no one stops you from, Google doesn't stop you from doing that. It's not really decentralized, but it's decentralized enough that everyone can just publish their own content, and everyone is responsible for their own content. And so this is a similar concept with the launcher, but more decentralized, as in like it's open source, everyone can build their own launcher, but in the end, basically you just provide the user with your publisher URL, and then they have access to your things. It's like as if you give a link to ModDB or some other page, but with the added benefits of what the launcher provides, like subscribing to this feed and getting updates and having everything integrated so that it installs in the correct location and can launch the game and discover add-ons and so on, right? So like an ecosystem for the game, for user-generated content. So there can be different publishers. So players will have to pick the publishers that they would like to get content from, right? So one publisher will be Community Outpost to publish their game client and their patch, right? Then another publisher can be Generals Online with their custom client, right? And then another publisher can be Shockwave Mod, right? And they can publish this thing. So in the end, the players are responsible themselves for not interacting with publishers that they don't like. The same way that you don't download from the internet any weird software that you shouldn't download, right? You pick and choose what you interact with, right?
Okay. So that vulnerability, that will be there still, that vulnerability, and it will be the user's responsibility to make sure, basically. Okay.
Yeah. So the job from like game replays and so on would be just to steer users into the desired direction. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Or warn them for the dangerous ones or the malicious ones. Yeah.
If that is necessary. Yeah.
If that is necessary. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
I guess the only other one would be, where do you see it going forward? What was your original plan, in a way, for Generals Online?
It's a good question. So initially, we are still on the path to get one-to-one parity with what GameSpy had. I don't think we're far away from that at this point. We need quick match and we need communicator, basically. And we're currently working on quick match. Beyond that, we definitely do want to extend and modernize the functionality. Like, there's a lot of parts of the online experience today, not gameplay, but actual like user experience, if you want to call it that, that is just ancient, right? I mean, one example I gave earlier was like being able to enter matchmaking as a squad would be useful, because if you want to do 3v3 quick match, maybe you don't want to be partnered with random people. Maybe you want to play with 3 people that you know and actually squad up. So things like that we are looking at adding in the long term. We don't plan on there being any like Generals Online specific gameplay changes. Is not something that we're interested in doing. If there's gameplay changes in Super Hackers, then yeah, those will be in Generals Online too, but we're not going to change gameplay. Everything that we change will be like user experience related, if that makes sense. But our current focus is to get to parity, and then beyond that, start looking at how we actually extend the functionality, and also provide more customization for users as well. Like if there's, for example, more options that we could enable on a per lobby, per match basis, we will do that if it's something that the community wants. But we're also open to feedback. So if anyone has any ideas, or there's like some pain points today in Generals that we should be solving, like just let us know, because we're trying to improve the user experience but maintain the gameplay as much as possible.
If you come to a point where you run out of big goals eventually, then please reach out, because there might be some big goals lurking around the corner that maybe are not on your radar, but that would be very nice to have, but that could be quite some challenge to implement. I'm eyeballing functionality that was never there in the original game. Basically, the big problem is in 0 Hour is that you cannot really matchmake reliable with clients that are incompatible with your own. And it's a big pain point. And like the transition to be able to matchmake with alien clients, there's just so much hurdles in between, right? Like there's no automation to discover this. So maybe we can like talk about strategies to make the user experience to be able to hop on different mods or different patches, different game versions with ease, right? So that everything is streamlined in ways where, yeah, you have this giant server, but you have different, you can have different experiences depending on who opens the room and what kind of game he chooses to play, right? So it's not just a matter of selecting a map to play on, but it's also a matter of selecting the desired mod or version that someone wants to play. Now, this like liberates it in ways that maybe everyone wants to play everything differently, but I don't think that's such a big worry. I think there's more value in everyone being able to matchmake, right? So I think that it's good because it also allows players to like to explore different kind of content when they are bored with, you know, the original experience. Maybe they feel like, oh, now it would be a nice time to play this mod, right? Which is very different, but maybe it's close to the original experience, and say, okay, let's try this out. Typically, originally, the barrier to get there is just so big that this doesn't actually happen. In practice, you have retail players, they will play the original game. They won't play mods much. Now, there can be exceptions, but it's not the norm. And to have this more liberal, have it easier to discover for play, I think that would be a really nice feature, but that, yeah, is probably quite a bit of work in both client and server to offer this kind of functionality.
Yeah, I think we will already start taking action on some of the feedback that we got in this meeting. Like, I think there's already work that we can do to make the server more like liberal or accessible to like clients that are not just the one that we've compiled. So I think we'll take those steps. I think the other thing that you'll see us do probably in the next month is start open sourcing a lot more. Like the relay service will definitely be open source probably in the next week or so. The backend service has taken a bit more time because we need to kind of double check everything is actually like we're not leaking anything that would cause security issues. But the relay is pretty straightforward in that regard. But we will be moving towards more and more open source. So I think that's the right direction to take here, so that like this can be of a community service that people can contribute to, can host their own if for whatever reason we stopped hosting it, like all those things. And we'll make sure that we document all this stuff as well about how you would actually stand all of this up if you had to on a cloud provider.
Mm-hmm. So you say it certainly will be possible at some point to even be able to spin up their own server if they really wanted to from the given code, right?
Yep.
Okay.
What about anti-cheat? Does it help with this? With cheating and catching like hackers in the game? If you have a central server for the game.
Yeah, so we today don't add any specific anti-cheat. We would like at some point to have Gentoo-like functionality, but we also, as we're understanding that will be part of super hackers at some point, so it doesn't really make sense that we duplicate the work. In terms of cheating concerns with a central server, but allowing like non-whitelisted clients, like shouldn't, as long as we actually take the correct steps to kind of separate and isolate clients, it shouldn't be too much of a concern, because really what we don't need to stop someone joining the server with a hacked client. What we need to stop them doing is being able to play with other people who don't have the exact same client as them. That's actually the problem. Someone being able to get into the chat room on GameSpy with a hacked client is probably okay, but we do want to stop them joining a legitimate game. So that's where we need to make sure that we're very tight on security, is basically that compatibility layer. So that's where we need to do work. Today we enforce that, but we enforce it kind of specific to our client, whereas the migration that we need to make is matching the clients to each other rather than matching them to the client that we expect that we've compiled, if that makes sense.
So do you mean you stop clients from joining rather than check the game, like while the game is playing, if someone has like made an illegal move? Is that it?
Yeah, and we do want to get the during gameplay functionality, but that's not something that we have right now. And like anything that we did do probably would just be similar to what Gentoo does today, like checking that they're not using map hacks and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we don't add any anti-cheat today other than actually trying to remove people with modified clients from joining a clean match.
Yeah.
Solving cheat will be very well, avoiding cheating will be very difficult now with the open source. So this will be something that we either can't solve or we can do something to make it very difficult. I think a first great milestone would be able to somehow be able to compile a client that only a specific author, the publisher, can do. Like, so if someone else tried to build the same client the same way, then the executable would be mutated in some way that is different and is not compatible with this self-compiled executable. So I think this would be one of the first goals. Now, obviously, it would probably still be possible to somehow cheat that client into that state, but it could be like really difficult to do on a binary level. So we would have to see how we can solve that. But yeah, beyond that, the game itself is is self-protecting against cheating because every client does run the simulation on his own, right? So if one client is cheating, like let's say he wants to add more money to himself, then those other clients that won't be part of their local simulation and they will mismatch, right? So the game naturally protects against certain kind of cheats with a mismatch because the game state will go out of sync, and yeah, that's a natural way how it protects. How we can go beyond that, yeah, we will have to see it. Possibly there will still have to be some closed source tool like Gen tool that just acts like an anti-cheat and does nothing else, and that the user has to like install on the side, right?
So a publisher might close source part of the code to like make cheats harder to do.
So we are not allowed to publish a game client with closed source parts. So the executable itself, it has to be built from all open source. So we cannot publish an executable with closed source. That's against the license from EA. So you cannot do that. So it would have to be a separate product that is being installed separately. Like Gen 2, for example, right? You have to go to a website and download it. It's your own decision, right?
I would like for a second, because I've spent a little bit of time myself researching the anti-cheat side of this, because I find the approach that Generals has already for anti-cheat to be at least a little bit novel compared to what's currently used in most actual products. So I think there is some room here to like improve this to the point where it does actually like genuinely work as an anti-cheat and keeps people out without having to worry about whether or not people can actually see the code. I think generally speaking, having stuff be closed source, it doesn't really help keep people from cheating. I think there are some like decentralized ways of dealing with this with some novel encryption techniques, and we could get to something that's real-time performant and potentially working. I don't have like something to actually present at this point. It's still very theoretical, but I think there are avenues to like actually producing something that we can actually ship with the client that like isn't actually an external tool and doesn't require any kind of closed source code, and would be at least strong enough that during the course of a match, nobody would be able to break into it. I think that's feasible, at least.
Yeah, I don't know how we will do it. So the big problem is all client-side related cheats, right? So everything that doesn't touch simulation. So for example, the big cheat is being able to see everything on the map, right? Seeing the units in the fog. And we won't be able to protect against that in the simulation because it's just not part of the simulation. And yeah, so things like this, it will be a bit more difficult to solve, but there are probably some steps to make it really hard. Will we be able to stop it entirely? Maybe not, but maybe it's good enough. Historically, like the anti-cheat from Gen 2 has never been exceptional. It's really basic what it does. It does, there's like a memory scanner in there, and it does create the screenshot that it uploads to the server. So it's really basic stuff, but it has been working fine. So maybe we are lucky and it doesn't attract so much cheating, but I would expect like the higher the player count, the more likely this happens, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're always going to have some amount of people that are like, "Hey, I can win games if I just download a tool." You're always going to see some amount of that. I think it's one of those problems. It's one of the greater unsolved problems in gaming right now, and it plagues products that are like multi-million-dollar projects that have a lot of like monetary backing and a lot of smart people behind them. So I don't think that we're going to necessarily solve that here today or like in this project, but I think we can get this to the point where most of the conventional stuff that would be useful is at least not super viable to cheat with. So you just wouldn't get like a useful result out of attempting. I think we can get there.
Yeah, one thing I was just going to mention, so this kind of goes off on a bit of a tangent, but I guess it's kind of future looking, and a couple of people have talked about it. So there's kind of the idea that there might want to be dedicated observers beyond the 8 players, or even extending the number of players per game. It's like that would require a lot more work to have extra players, but in terms of observers, so quite a few people streaming as well say, like what Legionnaire's doing at the moment, he's having a free-for-all tournament, but he can only play up to 7 players rather than the full 8 because he has to take a slot as a player just to observe the game. So
Yeah, so I think in the previous LAN event they did it. They had a 4v4 game and 2 observers. If I'm not mistaken, I remember there was an additional observer that usually isn't allowed in the game. I don't know how they did it. I think it's Arctic and Legionnaire, but again, I might be mistaken. I don't remember exactly what was it, but it was something like that. It was something like you can't usually do in that game.
Yeah, that's a separate discussion. The technicality behind is that they simply streamed the replay as it was created by the players as they played, and then they just played it back as it was written to. That's it.
Okay.
yeah, no, this consideration was just having an active observer, essentially. But I don't know how that would possibly be implemented on the online side of things, whether that's possible as it is now, or whether that would require a deeper change to the game itself.
Yeah, so regarding the observer, I think there are some tasks already in our repository and some nodes. But yeah, it probably requires a lot of work on the client and some work in the online services to make this happen. Because essentially the clients who are observers, they need to talk to some service that gives them this replay data, right? And they stream it in as it's being played, right? So yeah, there needs to be some central authority that provides it, that receives it, and then that broadcasts it. So yeah, technically it's possible, but yeah, how we implement it, we will have to see. It's for us, it's a bit too early, I would say. But yeah, I guess it's something that can always be explored in parallel. So if the General's online guys, they already explore such features, I think that would be good. But yeah, eventually we will get there as well.
So I am going to have to hop off because it's 5 p.m. here. Just wanted to say thanks for throwing this together. It was good to have this call. I do hope that we will stay in touch and we'll keep working towards the end goal of making this better for everyone. And hopefully we get to the point where we integrate the service.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also want to thank everyone who listened in. And yeah, I agree. And wish you a great day or night.
Thanks all.
Cool. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.